Back to your calls in just a moment. But first, we talk to Lisa Swayze. How are you, ma'am?
Hello.
How do you say your maiden name?
Hopanimi.
Hopanimi?
Uh-huh.
What kind of name is Hopanimi?
Finnish.
Finnish?
Yes.
Oh, well, who knew?
Yeah, Finnish both sides, both my mom and my dad.
But my materials only say Nimi.
Well, actually, I shortened it years ago because Hopanimi or Hopaniemi is very difficult to say.
Well, you're a pretty woman, but are all Finnish people pretty like the Swedes? Is this a Scandinavian thing?
I can't answer that.
Why?
You'll have to go look for yourself.
I'm looking at you. You're an attractive woman. That's why I'm asking. I saw pictures of you nobody ever said, oh, that Patrick Swayze, his wife is not as pretty as he is. I mean, people always kind of figured, well, Swayze's good looking, his wife's good looking. Y'all met here in Houston?
Yes, we did, actually.
Tell me about that.
I was at Houston Music Theater, Studio 7, and I met him when his mom's company and dance school merged with the theater group I was working with. And so that was the first time we saw each other. Our first contact was he was walking out of the theater, and I was walking in the theater. He reached over and pinched me on the rear and said, "Hey, cutie."
Did he do that to a lot of girls?
Well, actually, you know what? He grew up in a dance studio, so he was really used to being around a lot of pretty girls, and he didn't think anything about it. And of course, I thought it was pretty aggressive of him at that.
That was pretty cheeky, no pun intended.
No kidding, but it didn't help his reputation as having a big ego and being something of a Casanova, which I found out was not quite true later on.
Was he a big deal back then?
You know what? He always stood out. He was he was a picture perfect. He was almost too perfect. All American, jock. He could sing, he could dance, he was a great athlete, and actually I think that's what got him to trouble and where he got the bad rep, because when you're young, people don't like it when you stand out. So.
Have you ever seen a picture of me?
No, I haven't.
I look a lot like him.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, very much like him. So shortly after he passed, I remember the book The Time of My Life came out. And
yes.
you had worked on that book with him.
Uh-huh. In the last year of his life, we had done that book.
Right. And so why'd you want to write this book? The book is called Worth Fighting For, Love, Loss, and Moving Forward.
That's a good question, and there are many reasons why I went to write this. First of all, it was an incredible journey, and I felt compelled to tell about it, but also there's very little material out there from the point of view of the caregiver. There are a lot of books written from the people who are diagnosed with cancer, but not some. But I tell you what, when cancer strikes, it sets out to wipe out everybody in its path, just not just the one who's diagnosed. And it's a tricky journey, and it can be very heartbreaking and challenging, and at the same time, it can yield a lot of gifts, and there could be a lot of love that happens during that time, and much of it is very precious.
When I introduce you as Lisa Nimi Swayze, Patrick Swayze's widow. Does it bother you to be known as Patrick Swayze's widow?
You know what, I don't mind being Patrick Swayze's anything, but I hate the word widow. And because and all my widow friends agree, we sit around, we're trying to figure out our campaign how to redefine that word, because it just has a negative connotation, because it just says loss. And one of the most difficult things in this process of living out without someone that has been so close to you is trying to figure out how you're going to go on without them. And so for me, I'd like that word to start, instead of meaning loss, that it starts to mean more about reimagining your life and what you're doing with it, because it's when you're dealing with great grief, that's something that you have to think about before you get out of bed put your foot out that first step every day.
How about Patrick Swayze's wife?
That's hard too, because he's, well, you know what? I am still. So and
I was reading about you, and it said you stopped wearing your wedding ring, and that was important to you.
That about not wearing it?
Mm-hmm.
It was it. You know what? When I did that, and that was about a year ago, and it was in a moment that all of a sudden I don't know, I looked at it and I went, you know what, this ring says that I'm married to, it's about being married to the physical form. And it, you know, it's not a happy thing to be, not have him here with me. And the thought that came in my head at that point was that, you know, my connection to him is on a much deeper level now. I still have a relationship with him, but he's not here actually physically. And I have to say, after I took off the ring, I went, wait a second, maybe I'm not ready for this. But I kind of had already made the choice. And I'm actually having it enlarged so I can wear it on my right hand instead.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The book is called Worth Fighting For, Love, Loss, and Moving Forward. Lisa Swayze is the author. What do we need to know from caregivers? Why is that perspective important?
Well, you know, like I said, it you know, when illness like that strikes, it happens to both. It happens to all of, well, it happens to the whole family, and it's a hard thing. It's a terrific burden to carry. You know, and everyone's different in how they deal with it. One of the first things that we learned from a lady up in Stanford Hospital who worked in patient relationship is she said the first thing they learn is never to judge, because everyone handles illness in a different way, and some people can do a lot, and some people, you know, it's very difficult to face. But it's not that you do the best you can, you do what you can, but it's a tough journey, and to take heart and hope that you can make it through there. And well, you know, you have to really take care of yourself during the whole journey too, you know, particularly if you're a caregiver, because it's you know, many times actually caregivers end up getting sick.
You know, I just finished the Steve Jobs biography by Walter Isaacson. It's about 1,000 pages, and he doesn't devote a lot of time to Steve Jobs dying, but he makes he's very blunt, very honest about it, as Steve Jobs' wife wanted him to be. And she said, look, tell the good, the bad, the ugly. And Steve Jobs apparently was not what we might consider a good patient toward the end. He was very demanding. He was very mean. He did not take it well. He was hard on the people around him.
Yeah, that happens frequently. And actually with some of my widow friends, they weren't as lucky as they were challenged in that area themselves, because, you know, it's when you get contract a terminal illness, there can be such anger and existential angst that comes up, and it's very, very easy to lash out at those close to you. I was very lucky in that, you know, whereas a diagnosis like that can bring out the worst and the best in someone, my husband, he was always a great guy, and he became an even better person. And it was very, very impressive how he fought this disease.
The book is called Worth Fighting For, Love, Loss, and Moving Forward. Is the point of the book to inspire, inform, buck up the spirits of caregivers to terminally ill patients?
Well, not only that, but also people going through it that are diagnosed themselves.
Have you read the book, The Last Lecture?
I saw the last lecture. I didn't read the book. It was pretty incredible.
It's very incredible. After the lecture, in the last few weeks of his life, he writes this book as a way to try to make a little money for his family, and it ended up, of course, just like the actual video, taking off. It's a great book. I mean, he explains how the last lecture came about and how it, you know, what was happening in his life. It's pretty good. There's another book called Chasing Daylight. I don't know if you've ever come across.
No.
Chasing Daylight is apparently the concept for golfers as it gets dark in the evening when you're trying to finish a round of golf and you're chasing daylight. Yes. It's about a guy who gets a terminal illness of 60 days and how he goes through the process of what he calls unwinding his life. And he considers his terminal illness to be a gift, because he says, you know, most people don't get a chance as a young man to tell the people in their lives how much they love them, to perfect your goodbye. It's a very, very moving book. I read a lot of books about the end of life because I think it makes me live my life better.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, because it's a hard thing to do. It's almost like a New Year's resolution where you're going to work out and then you don't do it. It's hard to keep in mind that life is short, and there's no time like the present to get on what it is you want to do and who it is you want to be.
Well, and you hear the phrase so many times, live every day like it's your last. But I think if you can keep some level of perspective on that, it encourages you to live a very different life. You force yourself to live a very different life with fewer regrets. When Patrick Swayze got when he got pancreatic cancer, I'm assuming y'all knew that was a terminal diagnosis?
Oh my gosh, yes. I didn't know much about the disease when he was diagnosed, but he did. And that first day when he found out, I actually knew a little bit earlier than him, and I couldn't tell him until he had kind of recovered from a procedure and wasn't so groggy. But after that first day was over and the doctors and nurses had finally left the room, he turned to me and he said, "I'm a dead man." Up to that point, anybody he knew that had pancreatic cancer was dead very quickly. And it is a very aggressive disease. The average life expectancy is 3 to 6 months after diagnosis, because generally by the time you have any symptoms, it's already in an advanced stage, and that's one of the big problems with this type of cancer is there's no early detection, and it is terribly aggressive. And but of course our lives were sent instantaneously into a tailspin.
Well, and I think for so many people, Patrick Swayze was not. This whole situation was so widely discussed and covered, not just because it was Patrick Swayze and he was so popular, but because he was always perceived to be so healthy and strong.
Well, I tell you what, it was a good thing he was healthy and strong, because he went through many rounds of chemo and bounced back. His body responded very well, which is one of the reasons why he lasted as long as he did. And tremendous will and intention and courage. And and also, I guess, from being a dancer, he had a very high tolerance for pain and discomfort. And all of those served him in his fight. But mostly his spirit. He's always prided himself on being something of a warrior.
The paparazzi, one of the things in the materials about your book is you talk about the fight to maintain Patrick's dignity amid prying paparazzi.
Yeah. And we had to be very careful. And of course it didn't matter what we did, because and I do get asked a lot about what our reaction was to that, and because during the time of his illness, it was very infrequently that we responded to the press, and it was only when it just got so ridiculously wrong. And I mean, like when they said he had already died, we thought maybe we should release a statement. And actually our reticence to respond, made it really tough for some members of our family, because it hurt them so deeply. It was hurting us very deeply too. It was cruel. It was cruel when you're fighting for your husband's life, and he's fighting for his own, and that means everything. Hope is a very precious commodity, and the kind of headlines that Patrick received, which were generally that he was dying and saying farewell to me, and showing pictures of his father's and sister's graves with an arrow pointing to where he's going to be buried next. It can't help but really, it feels like it's attempting to destroy that hope. And so it's just, but you just keeping on, just deal with it and go on. And we, kept our intentions on the fight at hand.
Wow. The book is worth fighting for. Love, Loss, and Moving Forward. Lisa Swayze will be tomorrow, Saturday, January 7th at 3 p.m. in Houston at the West Houston Community Center on Bateswood Drive. Well, good luck with that.
Thank you very much.
All right.